Hello and welcome to the latest webinar hosted by Mapal, Kickstarting Hospitality Recruitment. So today we're going to be diving into one of the biggest challenges facing the sector at the moment, staffing and recruitment. So far this year, we've seen some pretty amazing figures come out. Around February, March time, we were looking at a 700% increase in hospitality vacancies being advertised and unfilled compared to pre-pandemic times. As recently as a couple of weeks ago, we were still looking at hundreds of thousands of extra hospitality vacancies not being filled compared to the same time before the pandemic. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk today about what the hospitality recruitment landscape looks like as of right now, some of the main challenges facing employers, how they're tackling those challenges, and what candidates are really looking for in these jobs. So I'm joined today by a panel of three wonderful guests, all on the front line of this issue. We have Krishnan Doyle, who's the Managing Director at Core Recruitment, Jeremy Rawlinson, who is the COO at Stint, and Anna Moras, who is the General Manager of a central Edinburgh venue, the Theatre Royal Bar. So if we could start by just having a quick round of introductions. Jeremy, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, yes, thanks, Paul. My name's Jeremy, or Jez, everyone calls me. I'm the COO at Stint. Previous to this, I was the Managing Director for a serviced apartments and hotel business called Sonder, and before that I was a very early stage employee at Deliveroo.
Fantastic. Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Moras. I'm a general manager at Theatre Royal Bar in Edinburgh, as Paul mentioned. I've been at this position for the past 10 years, in general working in hospitality for the past 16 years. Yeah, pretty much that's it.
And Krishnan.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks very much for having us along today. Much appreciated. I don't know, my logo is kind of drooping behind me, but it's there somewhere. Tech issues like extraordinaire. So Core Recruitment, been Managing Director of Core Recruitment for the past 15 years. So I always like to think that I've seen just about everything that recruitment has to throw at you, and then suddenly the hospitality industry just throws lots of new curveballs at you as well. So yeah, really glad to be here. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, Krishnan, perhaps we can start with you. Just give us a general idea of what you're seeing in the recruitment landscape at the moment. What does the market look like?
So we cover lots of different segments, kind of like in terms of like head office support roles, as well as operations, as well as kind of like internal stuff as well. We've got about 5 offices outside the UK as well. So we see lots of different trends happening in lots of different ways, kind of like across the industry. So for example, in our Cape Town office in South Africa at the moment, there's 52% unemployment. So they have kind of a whole girth of hospitality staff in teams, whereas in the UK, obviously people are crying out for that. So on that side of things, like we're trying to make the most of relocating people internationally. We just actually placed a chef in the UK who was relocating from South Africa, and he got 20 times his salary for relocation to the UK. And the consultant that was working with him actually had to call his grandmother and reassure her that it wasn't a scam and that genuinely he was coming to the UK and he was getting that much of a pay rise. So that was pretty funny. But there's lots of things like that that are going on. I think from a UK perspective, I think that we're seeing that a lot as we get further and further away from the last lockdown. We are seeing that candidates are a little bit more confident about making a move, and they're more interested in having conversations. I always look about things in terms of like passive candidates and active candidates, and at any normal time in any normal market, about 15% of the market's active and about 85% is passive. I think what we saw earlier on this year took up to about 100% being passive because nobody was applying for jobs and nobody was looking, and we're definitely seeing now that there's a bit of a slackening of that kind of happening. The interesting parts, I guess, is that as opposed to kind of like people's number one question always used to be about salary, and now people's number one question is about hybrid working. It's about benefits. It's about what's the employer going to do. It's about what's the employer going to give. And it's really important that employers maybe like react in a moderate way to that, in terms of making sure they're on trend in terms of what their competitors are offering when they're attracting the right candidates in. I mean, we see lots of candidates who would much rather take lower salaries if they got to work an element of home working as opposed to being 5 days a week in the office. Sorry, that was quite a long answer to quite a short question. So I'll pass it over to somebody else.
Fantastic. Jeremy, so obviously Krishnan is focusing more on the higher level, higher end hospitality levels. You're focusing on the sort of entry level area. What are you seeing in that market?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, so a little bit of background about Stint. So Stint are we're a hospitality staffing business, and we're here to support businesses with their staffing challenges. And what we do is we build a pool of workers who want to come in and do basic tasks for as little as 2 hours at a time. And what we're sort of seeing actually is we're actually very easily able to recruit lots of workers for this work because we offer a lot of flexibility. I think the big thing that sort of changed in the world is I used to work at Pizza Express when I was at university. And when I was at Pizza Express, I had to work Saturday double shift, Sunday double shift, and then during the week. And if I didn't do that, I didn't have a job. Those days are sort of gone. People want a lot more flexibility, and that's what we're seeing. And we're seeing when I speak to businesses, the big brands, they're able to get, or big retailers, they're able to get people in through the door. Yes, the application numbers have gone down. So pre-pandemic, they'd probably get about 20.2 to 20.4 applications per role. It's now about 4.1. So it's huge drop is what I see across the industry. But they're able to get people in. But unfortunately, people are coming and then they're leaving. And so they're really struggling to retain. And then on the smaller, more SMB, independent, medium-sized businesses, it's really hard to attract those brands in because it's really expensive. You have to spend a lot of money on all of that. And so what we've sort of seen is we've seen that people are wanting to come to our platform to have flexibility so they can go and choose to work when they want, where they want to work for lots of different businesses. And we found that really an easy way to sort of acquire workers. We've actually got an active worker pool of like 30,000 at the moment on our platform in the UK. And we're really able to fill all of the work that's available. For example, we had a business call us up on Friday night. I think it was at 9-10 p.m. He had an events company, and he was missing 30 members of staff for Saturday and Sunday on Jubilee weekend. And he was like, I don't know what to do. We filled them within 18 minutes. So through the power of technology and people wanting this flexibility, the workers are there. We just can't offer what we always used to offer historically. And I think that's the big thing that I've sort of seen.
That's fascinating. So Anna, you kind of fall in the middle of these two because you're hiring full-time sort of bar, waiting and kitchen staff. So what are you seeing in terms of applicants and recruitment?
Well, the main issue, I guess, for us is the fact that we are not getting applicants at all. I think if you're a hiring company and people apply for jobs with flexibility, was something what I cannot give people, it's much harder. Pre-pandemic, perfect. We had plenty of people coming over asking for jobs. People were willing working any hours without any flexibility. Then people just wanted to work. I think pandemic time, during pandemic, people realized that there are better options for them than actually working late hours in the bars and restaurants where you constantly on your feet, you constantly tired, you constantly talking to other people, and you have to be honest, entertain people who are not really nice to you most of the time. So yeah, lack of applications. This is our biggest issue at this moment. When we do have people coming over asking for a job, usually they do not have any experience. There are people who even trying to say they do have experience in hospitality industry, but it's actually not the experience that we are looking for. Silly example, for past week, we had 2 applications for jobs. One person, unfortunately, could not speak any English, and that was our biggest issue because obviously in hospitality, you have to be able to communicate with other people. Second person who applied for a job, they were not willing to work hours that we could offer. Basically, again, going back to flexibility, for us is working 7 days a week. It doesn't matter, bank holidays, Christmas. We have to sacrifice those days to be at work, where people are looking now for actually easy job where they can come over, they can do their own thing at a certain time, they can come over, do a few hours at work, plus they want to have a life. I had a person who told me that they are willing to work, but they do have their yoga classes and the gym on certain days, basically Fridays, Saturdays, the busiest period for our trade, and they cannot work those hours. So it's kind of yeah, this is the very difficult part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jeremy, you mentioned you had some staff, some positions to fill over the bank holiday weekend, and you were able to fill them within 18 minutes. You said so that's completely the opposite of what Anna's experiencing. Do you think that's just because you offer the flexibility to pick up one shift and then drop it, or?
Yeah, I think. Look, I think when I think about this, when I was running the hotels at Sonder quite recently, quite large scale. We came out of the third lockdown, and like everybody else, like we had shed quite a lot of our staff, and we had our core team, and they were there, and then we're like, well, we'll just build the team like we used to. But the people weren't there. We didn't have a big brand. We weren't able to attract loads of people, and we didn't get the applicants. And so we were operating. My core team were getting so stretched. And they were like, oh, we're going to leave. This isn't fun anymore. I'm working all the hours. I have no free time. This isn't fair. And I was sitting here and I was like doing all the things that I'd done historically when I'd worked in hospitality for like people like One Fine Stay. And then what I really realized is we need to change sort of how I was operating. I couldn't operate in the same way as I was operating before. And historically, what I've been doing was, all the same things. And so that's how I found Stint. I actually didn't find Stint looking for a job. I found Stint looking for a solution. And that's what I felt that I really needed to learn to do is with my business is that I had to change how we operated. So what I did is I shrunk down my core team. So I had a really core team that worked the hours that they wanted. They're protected for their 40 to 60 hours that they wanted. And then what I did is I topped it up with these basic tasks. I split the jobs into what was really basic. So like housekeeping, for example, I went and got a student to come in and they came in at 11 o'clock for 2 hours because it's cheap. I can only get them for 2 hours, which is great. So I don't need to pay for them for that 6 to 8 hours as well. And they came in and stripped all the beds for the whole hotel. And then they put all the linen, brought it all downstairs, and then they left. And then my housekeeping minutes went from 44, dropped down to 25. And so and then my team were happier because they weren't lugging linen around and they weren't dealing with the rubbish part of their jobs. And that's what I think what I've really realized that this is pushing us to do is with the crisis, it's called the Great Recession for a reason. It isn't possible to continue to operate how we used to. We need to adapt how we operate. We need to change how we operate, bringing people in for specific things. And then we can protect that core team and use a bigger pool of people that can come in and use them in the flexibility to what Anna's just saying is people want that flexibility. You just need to have a bigger pool of people. And that's how for me as a business, when I was running Sonder, is like, I couldn't go out and hire like 40 people for 5 roles. It's not possible. And so this is where like the platforms come in that allow you to like pick and choose people to come in when you need them. And number one, I didn't have to spend all my time doing recruitment, which is the most stressful thing as an operator. And so, yeah, so I personally really believe that we need, as a business, as an industry, we need to adapt to what we've done previously, because otherwise we'll forever be in the trouble that Anna's having right now.
Yeah. So how are you actually finding these applicants, Joe? Oh, sorry, Anna.
If I can jump in, yeah, you're absolutely right in what you said. For example, situation for me at this moment is I would love to have more people to give my staff the flexibility they need. So it comes to summer, people want to go on holidays, and obviously after 2 years pretty much being stuck in the country, everyone to go somewhere and do something, and they don't want to go only for a few days. They want to take 2 weeks to actually enjoy themselves and have that proper break. But that's the main issue. I would love to give them flexibility of going and doing this if I have enough applicants, if I have enough people who are coming over and willing to do this job. But without the staff, I'm not able to basically offer the people who I'm employing at this moment the time off they are requiring. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, that perfectly leads on to what I was just about to ask. So how are you actually finding these applicants in the first place? Because Anna's situation is she can't find enough applicants to begin with.
Yeah, so I think we there's a couple of things that we're quite lucky at. So we have a bit of brand. We focus hugely on students to start with, so the younger demographics. And what's quite good with students is they're quite viral. So once they speak to their friends, they find an easy way to make money. You know, you get a lot of organic. So Organically, we get about 80 new people. We can start, if we want to, start about 80 new people in London, for example, a day. So we can easily get those applicants to come in. They don't work as many hours as traditionally. So they work roughly about 3 to 4 shifts a week. Those shifts can go from 2 to 6 to 8 hours generally. And then the other things we do is digital. We do a little bit of offline, so in student halls and things like that. But if I'm honest with you, it's the proposition. It's like, make money when you want to make money, and that's the way you got to think about this. There's only a certain amount of traffic. If you think about a website, you're like Amazon or any of these guys. If you think about it, there's only a certain amount of traffic that you can drive to your site. And so if you drive as many people and as many eyes on through recruitment, all those different companies that you can do, you then come to your conversion aspect. So how many of these people can convert? And what we've seen is the number of traffic has quartered. So the people that are willing to do this job has gone from 20 to, let's say, 20 to 5. And what that means is that your conversion probably has actually remained pretty much the same, but your number that you're working off is a lot smaller. So what you need to basically do is massively improve your conversion. And the only way to improve your conversion is increase rates, pay people more money, which we know as a hospitality business, we can't afford to do. What I saw in the hotels was I saw an increase in rates of, I think housekeeping went from like £9.50 to £11.60 in central London in the space of like 7 months. It's just crazy. So you can either pay people more money, or you have to then look at what you're proposing to people and see how you can adapt. And so that's what my belief is. My belief is that we can't continue to work to hike wages because we can't continue to increase our price of our pints, and price of our food. We need to look at our workers, who are that 5 remaining people, try and attract more people by providing more of what they want. But more to the point is it's about listening to them, talking to them. What do you want? Do you want this flexibility? Do you want these things? And then building that proposition to try and attract those people. It means that we just have to change how we've been doing things historically, and that's my true belief about how I think about this incredibly challenging and difficult problem.
Yeah, but at the same time, you've got a situation at this moment that so many venues is looking for a staff, like literally everywhere in Edinburgh. Everywhere you're going to go on the street, high street, in like, I know, a wee village, you've got everyone looking for a staff. And now is the issue of hiring those people fast, those people who are willing to work productively and actually enjoying their job. How you get them really fast if literally they're going to say apply for a job in 20 different places. The process of employing people, it's a standard. You're getting CV. You ask people to come over for interview. By the time sometimes you ask people to come over for an interview, they already got a job in some other place because they apply for 20 jobs, and day by day people are getting back to them. So this is the issue. It's like we've got so much job to give, but we don't have enough people to apply for it. It's different for you. Like when you're talking about the housekeeping, people can come over to work for 2 hours. It's great. When it comes to hospitality, we do physically need the people to be on the site, not only for 2 or 3 hours. We need them to be at work for 6 to 10 hours. And this is the problem, because for me, I'm working in a pre-theater venue where it says like 3 hours of the day, we may be absolutely dead, nothing is happening. Then 3 hours pre-theater, we are getting absolutely mad busy. And that's the moment when I need the staff. We've got the 2 hours break when the theater is on. After that, again, 3 hours of extreme busy. And it's just, sometimes we do have to pay people to be on the site where actually we don't have to do much work. This is the thing. Like we need to get the people who are willing to do, people who are actually interested in this industry. In the past, we were getting students. It was great because students were coming over, and usual they will stick to the same job. I will have people working with me for 5 years. So the first year when they come over to university, they will stay for 5 years with me, and they were doing a great job. And it was so many of them that actually I could give them that flexibility. If someone asked me, it's like, oh, it's the summertime, we want to go for 3 weeks back home to visit our family. I was like, yeah, absolutely, no problem, go on, because we've got so much stuff. Where right now, it's impossible.
Well, I think, and I should give you a call afterwards and see how Stint can help you, because I think what you're saying there is like that is what our proposition is built for. So we should definitely chat after this.
Great. Just conscious of time, I'd like to bring it back to the more senior levels in hospitality as well. Krishnan, if I could bring you back into the conversation. We've talked a lot about of flexible working. Do you think that is the key now? Having a larger team, perhaps working fewer hours?
I think there's definitely kind of like a part of it. I think the thing which kind of like links both conversations together is about maybe just making sure that you've got an interview process which is fit for purpose. And for us, for example, at the moment, it's like, when you do manage to get a candidate who is a passive job seeker along to an interview, you need to make sure that that person who's representing your company engages with that candidate as best that they possibly can. And it always used to be the case in hospitality that kind of like, people would turn up for an interview and there was always this kind of attitude of like, oh, you're applying for a job, you need to impress me. That's completely turned on its head now, which is what Anna was alluding to earlier on, where it's kind of like, you need to impress that candidate that's coming in the door. You need to make that right impression. I think the other thing which has also been really interesting, which I think Jez kind of touched on a little bit as well, is that we do a lot of work on diversity and inclusion kind of like across the agency. And it's not a new thing, but one of the things which is coming to the forefront is neurodiversity. And although we don't operate at the kind of like the frontline level, we did do a bit of analysis work for a client who was really struggling at the front line to recruit people, and they'd moved their entire interview process digitally. And if you're a neurodiverse candidate, i.e. if you have dyslexia, dyspraxia, these kind of like traits, then that's massively intimidating. They also had an 8-page application that they like for candidates to fill in, which again, if you're neurodiverse, that's like an absolute nightmare for you. So I think it just is a little bit about kind of thinking about kind of like the interview process that you're doing, making sure it's fit for purpose, making sure it's engaging, making sure that it creates a really nice warm handshake for the business. The other bit as well, and sorry, I know that we're going to run out of time in a little bit, but the other thing that increasingly kind of like candidates are asking us about is the purpose of the organization. They're asking, what's the mission? What's the social good? What's the diversity? What's the sustainability? What's the carbon footprint? All of these types of things. And if you are looking at the moment at attracting these types of candidates and looking at those types of candidates, they want to work for businesses that they can be proud of working for. And that's where, if you're a small to mid or massive business, you need to think about kind of like, what's your social footprint? How am I promoting myself? And how am I positioning myself on that side of things as well?
That's very interesting. Jeremy, perhaps you can talk about that from the other end of the spectrum. How important is branding down to those entry-level jobs?
Yeah, I was just going to say on the neuro stuff, I completely agree. I mean, I'm actually very dyslexic, and so if someone gave me an 8-page application form, I'm just scripting that up and not doing it. So it doesn't matter what the job is. I'm not going to reply. So I think branding is really, really important. And this is the challenge that I think most businesses have is the bigger brands, sort of the brands that on the high street, your supermarkets and your and also the big high street chains. They have just scale and they have money to invest. I've heard recently that people are paying up to £1,500, including training, for every single person that comes onto their workers even for an hourly working job. Just to give you a concept, right? Like, think about the payback that comes with that employee. It's extortionate amount of money. And so branding is a really important part, but it's something that comes at scale. And so, like, I personally don't feel that there is like a silver bullet to all of these things. Making your brand seem fun, making your brand seem very like focusing on like its diversity and really caring about employees. And I also think people really evaluate businesses on how they handled the pandemic. And so they will look at you and say, what did you do when COVID hit? And I think being able to answer these questions in a way where it showed that you had care and took care when these big dramatic things happen, I think will make people stand out versus others.
Amazing. So we've got a few questions rolling in actually from people watching. A couple of questions around the onboarding process. How important is that initial onboarding for keeping staff, so you don't have to keep finding replacements, basically? Krishnan, perhaps you could start off with that one.
I mean, onboarding for us is kind of like really vital. There's been lots of research which has been done, which subconsciously says that when you start with an organization for your first 2 weeks, you basically decide how long you're going to stay with that business for when you're there, whether you know it or you don't know it, or you say it or you don't say it. And the thing is, like, you have to think about kind of like, you know, any general manager, any head chef, any area manager, any operations manager who's worth their salt at the moment has probably got 5 or 6 different options of where they can go and where they can work. And just because they accept a job doesn't mean that they stop calling them, doesn't mean we stop calling them. You know, I mean, we always try and keep in touch with kind of like, you know, really good top performers. And if somebody does get to a company and they decide that actually the induction hasn't been great, actually they didn't live up to expectations, actually kind of like, you know, it's not everything that they said it would be. I don't think there's that same stigma attached now, because people are so keen to take people on. So there isn't that same stigma attached that kind of like, oh, you've gone somewhere for a month, there must be something wrong with you. That just doesn't exist anymore. Companies are very happy to pick people up in that kind of regard. So I think that's maybe one thing to kind of to lead in on that side of things. I think Jeremy was smiling wryly there, so he might have something to add as well.
I was actually with the operations director for the Savoy a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying about the amount of returners that he has through they use Stint for their stuff, I was really interested afterwards. So I went and looked through the data and looked through the numbers, and it was really, really clear. It like that first experience will drive so much better like retention from workers. I even think for the basic hourly staff, I think it is literally your first shift. And if your first shift goes really well, they're more likely to come back. That's when you're likely to see like the no-shows and the non-drop-off. So that first experience that you have with your business is so, so crucial, because if you can get that drop-off to be like 5% rather than or more, you're going to save so much time. I think it's crucial to your success.
Anna, are you seeing something similar at the Theatre Royal?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do agree. When it comes to the first shift, this is something you want to show people who you are, how you work. For example, for us working in our bar, it's pretty much one big family. That's what I like about my workplace. That's the reason why I stuck to this bar for so many years. I'm literally at the same bar for over 10 years, which is absolutely mental when I'm telling people like, yeah, I'm the same place 10 years. They're like, why are you not getting bored? And I'm like, well, I'm not bored because we've got this family. It's changing every few years. Like I'm saying, people coming and going. But up to this point, we never had this, that we had people working with us a month and they will leave because they didn't like it. People were always around because we showed them that we care. And even that, like, not always fully I could give them what they expected from me as a, like, when it comes to the money, basically the pay rises. This is something what not fully depends on me. I could not offer them that, but they will still be around. And some of them are still coming back to help us and work in the bar when we are stuck. It's just because they like the place and they like how we run things. So yeah, it's first shift, and how you treat your people is definitely very important. Yeah.
Amazing. You've sparked a few comments there about company culture in general. Maybe Krishnan, you can chip in for the more senior roles. How important is company culture and that kind of the atmosphere that you work in, I guess?
Yeah, so for us, whenever we're screening people, we kind of have a philosophy that it's on 3 different parts. So there's technical ability, there's culture fit, and then there's motivation. And culture fit is always the thing which is kind of like, so the technical ability is, can you physically do the job? Yes, job. Box ticked. Motivation, do you want to do the job? And then the culture fit is kind of like, do you rub along with everybody else to such a point that, you know, you can actually get along with them and not leave the office wanting to self-harm every day. And that's kind of like, you know, something which is really important increasingly for people, is that they want to kind of like see that mirrored when they go and interview for kind of like jobs and companies and positions. It's quite interesting. We did an LGBT interview series last year, kind of like as part of Pride Month, and every single person that I interviewed, there was about 30 different interviews that we did, and every single person I interviewed, all really high caliber, like, you know, people who are at the top of their game, and they all said that, like, you know, when they go to interview with businesses, when they think about companies they want to partner with, when they think about companies they want to work with, they want to see their values in that company, and they want to recognize that as well. So I think it's really important, especially with it being Pride Month, that everybody does stand up and kind of like, you know, change their logo, kind of like make some sort of impact, you know, that kind of side of things is really, really, really important when you're kind of like when you're attracting people in. And it's the same thing with the neurodiversity thing. It's the same thing with diversity in general, that people want to work for progressive organizations, and that's something which is quite important. There was one quite interesting thing that happened, that not every role that we recruit for is going to be a popular role, and sometimes you do have to recruit for positions which are, you know, like health and safety or compliance or chief of staff or something like that. And it's just important that where you are recruiting, you know, for positions, like not everybody is, I think when people talk about company culture, they suddenly start to think it's quite fluffy, or it's something which is kind of like a bit untangible. And it is important to kind of say that, like, you know, it is okay to go and work for these companies and organizations, because you need a mix of different personalities. So we don't always get asked to get kind of like really fluffy culture, kind of like, you know, people who aren't into P&Ls and are more into like other things. So it's important that you get a good mix of people who are coming to work for your organization as well. I think that makes up a really good list. I'm not a massive fan of psychometric testing, but it can help when you're looking to get a mix of people on board.
Fantastic. We are just about out of time. I've had quite a few questions come in specifically for you, Jeremy, around maintaining standards and maintaining quality if you're bringing people in for really short shifts and switching them out all the time. Do you want to just quickly comment on that before we finish?
Yeah, so I hugely believe in a concept called it's like looking at the different tasks, basic and skills, and splitting them out. So looking at the different things and making sure that you give these basic tasks, things that anyone can do. So anyone can fill up a water glass, for example, or anyone can clear a table, and then enable your core team to be able to do more. So one chain we work with, a big chain, what we did is we take off a load of the basic tasks. So filling up glasses on the back shelves, clearing tables, supporting on the running the food. And that allowed that their staff could have bigger sections and therefore make more tips. And it was that supporter that helps them through their shift. And you only need to be in for a couple of hours. And so it's not possible to bring somebody in for 2 hours and do everyone's job exactly the same. Agencies have not worked for years, and they'll never work. We need to look at how agencies work, change how they work in general, think about the actual tasks these people are doing, move them into doing just this basic selection of tasks that don't hugely affect, if they're not done, they hugely affect the guest experience, but they don't massively affect who does it, and therefore be able to bring people in for this short time, therefore controlling the quality. So yeah, that's sort of how I think about it.
Great stuff. Well, on that note, we have unfortunately run out of time. So thank you, all three of you, for joining us, and thank you everyone watching online as well. We'll be back again with the next one. Thank you.